If you want to carry as support in low elo, it's kind of unavoidable that you're eventually going to run into some issues. We do have to admit that common complaints from supports have some merit to them. I mean, if your ADC is bad, you can't exactly win the lane, but at least you can just go roam around the map. Well, what if your mid laner sucks, and your jungler sucks, and your top laner sucks too? What then? Roaming is only really going to get you so far. Roles that can pick hyper carried champions and funnel resources into themselves have a real chance to just not care about these games and 1v9. But for supports, that isn't really possible most of the time. Of course, we are playing the long game. Over hundreds of games, if we're better than our opposing support, we will win the majority of our games and go up in ranks. But it definitely isn't the dopamine and fast climb that we want. So, what's the fix? Learn a new role and abandon support completely? Well, no. Today we're going to be looking at a new strategy that turns support into the carry of the team. If you want to absolutely demolish games and put your whole team on your back, then stick around. And if you want to be ahead of the meta with guides just like this one that are exclusive to our members, then you should definitely check out Skill Capped after this. It's famous for how stupidly effective our guides are, and we're also known as the only service that offers a rank up guarantee. Because our service works, and we believe you shouldn't pay if you don't climb while actively using Skill Capped. So check us out after this. Anyways, back to the guide, and if you don't believe that you can 1v9 every game as support, you don't have to take our word for it. This is actively being used by the LEC support for Schalke 04 as he's climbing his low elo accounts. And he's even played a few games in high elo with it as well. So what is it exactly? Misfortune support. Okay, so we know what you're thinking. We've seen a million iterations of Misfortune support, but trust me, you haven't seen this one. Almost every past version of MF support has run Spell Thieves, Comet, and gone AP, maxing E to do poke damage. While this is still viable, it definitely isn't going to give you the 1v9 performance that you want. The DPS just isn't there to truly carry a game, and you definitely fall off as the game goes on. So how do we remedy that? We build full AD. No, not lethality and Dark Harvest either. We've seen that before, and it also definitely falls off. We go full ADC. I'm talking Kraken Slayer and eventually even Infinity Edge, the whole carry package. So now you're probably wondering two things. How does this work? And then even if it does, why should I play it? Well, let's answer that. The meta right now frankly has a lot of very annoying champions to play against. Especially for bot laners, snowballing against enchanters and mages like Janna, Soraka, Lux, and Lulu is often incredibly difficult, and it can feel like the lane is completely at a standstill against them. They have long range, usually offer shields or heals to prevent damage, and stalemates are pretty frequently accepted. Of course, we can try to pick something like Blitzcrank to hook them and then let our ADC snowball, but that relies on our ADC actually playing the lane somewhat decently, and we have to hit our hooks. Misfortune support offers a guaranteed way for you alone to shut down these supports. Misfortune ult is by far one of the highest damaging abilities in the game. Late into the game, you can often be doing 6,000 plus damage if enemies take the full duration of the ultimate. Given that most squishy champs are going to be having around 2,000 health at most, it's way too much damage for anyone to try and heal or shield their way through. So not only can you just kill someone through sustained healing, but you can also take advantage of one of the main weaknesses of these enchanters and mages. All of them are completely immobile. By dropping E and R in them throughout the game, you're going to either completely zone them out of the fight so that they just can't participate, or you'll kill them for trying. She's one of the only champions in the game that not only outranges them enough to pressure first, but also has the damage to back up her threat. Misfortune shines when she's picked in these immobile matchups, and you can see that Lilith counters these champs specifically with Misfortune. On top of absolutely owning these bot lane matchups, it definitely helps that some of the most common mid lane champions being played right now are of a similar archetype. Vex, Victor, Syndra, and Anivia would terrorize most support champions. Imagine walking into Syndra if you're playing a standard mage like Zyra. You just get blown up before you even get into range. But MF has the ability to actually pressure in that situation too. However, this doesn't mean that MF is even bad into the standard engage or tank supports either. Let's take a quick look at a game that I played in Smurf Queue against a Thresh. Thresh Caitlyn is a pretty terrifying matchup in general for most champions, but Misfortune performs extremely well in specific situations when building AD. Even though my ADC gets hooked to start this engage, we actually come out of it for the better, without blowing any summoners at all. But why is that? If you paid close attention, you'll notice the big differences between AD and AP MF here. Not only do I have Q and W scaled here instead of the usual E and W, I also have press the attack. Misfortune as AP struggles very hard in long sustained fights, but this is where AD MF shines. Even when you initially take a bad trade, there are basically no other support champions that will be able to match your DPS in the long term. Well, because you're literally a second ADC. With this version of MF, it's important to realize that long trades benefit you and to use your DPS to outdo any other supports in lane. If you make the trade as long as possible, you will come out on top. We can see this later when my Jhin walks up to get hit with Thresh's full combo, but watch as he evaporates. I'm even able to chase down the Caitlyn with my enhanced move speed, and if I wasn't terrible at the game and canceled my auto here, it would have been a super clean double kill. Notice how fast Thresh blew up when I procced PTA, and this is why ADMF is so potent. You can auto Q auto and stack it almost instantly, which will amplify you and your ADC's follow-up damage. Again, long trades benefit you to the extreme, which hook supports are very bad at. Against mages, you're probably not going to be able to get these super long trades except when your opponents really mess up. You can see that when they do walk into range to try and follow up on the bind onto my Caitlyn, that I just solo win the trade. You can also see how horrendous some of these situations look before the overall DPS I output ends up turning it into a decent situation. Once our opponents use their cooldowns, the fight always swings back into our favor. But even if this doesn't happen and our opponents know not to take these extended trades, this is why we max Q in order to actually deal with them. Even without actually killing the minion and just getting a regular bounce without the crits, look at my damage here. The range and spammability on this ability is ridiculous, as you eventually can get it down to a 3-second cooldown just by putting levels into it. It's also important that this works even without the last hit, since we obviously don't want to be taking farm from our actual carry. At least, not right now. Later on, part of what makes MF such a nice support is that you can actually do all of the wave management stuff that other supports just can't. In situations like these, the wave will just sit here, or sometimes even slow push to your opponents, denying you tons of farm. If you're playing champs that aren't self-sufficient, even if you want to fix this wave, you just couldn't. But watch what I can do now. This is so stupid of me to do, but this wave is so... Easy, never punished. And we fixed the wave. I cannot overstate how nice this is to be able to play a champ that can cover up the lack of game knowledge for my teammates. I will often just pick up insane amounts of farm from my team, just not getting CS in low elo. I've shown an entire video about how easy it is to just grab farm as support without trolling your team, and MF is definitely one of the best champs at doing this. So with that being said, she probably has a lot of weaknesses, like not being great at roaming, or warding, or having utility. But this is not the case at all. MFW is built-in mobility boots. You can get away without building boots at all in the early game and outpace people that do. At max rank, this ability gives 95 move speed. Mobi boots only give 115 out of combat, so once you build your actual boots, you're eclipsing even that. This makes her a very potent roamer, and with E-slow and strong DPS, you're able to excel in skirmishes too, even against people that are much higher leveled since you're not wasting gold on movement. So what about warding and utility? One of the biggest struggles of any squishy support is going to ward on your own, because you can just get jumped and instantly die. However, MFE has an incredibly long range, covers a lot of area, and most importantly, grants vision. Before face checking anything, you can just throw E down and make sure you're safe, which is a huge advantage that other supports don't have. The other thing that supports often struggle with is clearing vision. Without building attack speed, it takes forever to kill wards and pinks. MF not only builds attack speed, but you also rush Umbral Glaive, a super cheap item and one with a lot of utility. The build path is amazing, consisting of entirely long swords and a dirk. And once you finish it, you get a built-in sweeper and instant ward killer, making her one of the best champions at actually clearing out vision. On top of this, you can easily itemize into anti-heal with Mortal Reminder. This item is cheap as well and gives movement speed, so you'll be able to not only apply it super easily to everyone with your R, but you'll be running around the map even easier. Your average build is going to look something like this. Take Sickle as your starting item and then rush Umbral Glaive first, with cooldown boots or Berserker Greaves next. Then go into Kraken Slayer and Mortal Reminder. Now you can access Infinity Edge's 60% crit requirement, and if you're super ahead, can buy this to start outputting huge damage. Other games might call for a more defensive build like Guardian Angel or Maw, and if your opponents are stacking tons of armor, feel free to grab a Last Whisper as well. You definitely don't need IE to do insane damage. For runes and abilities, take PTA with Triumph, Bloodline, or Alacrity, and Coup de Grace. Secondary, you can run Zombie Ward with Treasure Hunter. Max Q, W, and then E, and obviously put points into R whenever you can. This build is extremely fun and does play very similarly to how an actual ADC needs to play. So if you're looking for ins and outs of Misfortune specifically, definitely check out our full-length champion guide, as a lot of these tips and tricks will definitely be relevant to you too. And that's pretty much all you need to start playing this build and carrying games. Definitely look to counterpick those mages and enchanters, but if you do just want to pick this every game, you'll do fine into hook champs too. Let us know how this works for you, and until next time, happy climbing.